In the first learning part, we'll be talking about what cloud computing is. Then we'll talk about the cloud models. Um, just hand in hand with the cloud models, we'll talk about the shared responsibilities. Then we'll talk about the capex and the opex. The consumption. How do Azure charges customer? You know, we'll talk about the cloud benefits. What are some of the benefits you get when you use cloud services? Then we'll talk about the service types that we have. So do not mistake the services um, with the resources. Even when, you know, under each of this service, we have many resources you can actually deploy. We have many technologies you can actually use under each of the service. So we'll talk about the IaaS, the PaaS, and the SaaS. So what is cloud computing? So let's start with that. I've explained this, using the IT room that we all know from our previous organizations, or maybe our schools, where we have maybe an ICT office or an IT room, just the same way, even back to our secondary school days where we have IT room, IT office. So what do we have in there? We have computers, we might have printers, we'll have some network cables, servers, and that servers are used in hosting applications. You see all these websites that you can see, they are hosted on a server. So when I say I want to access nhs.org, nhs.org resides on a particular server. You know, home office website, whatever website you access. It might be British Airways, it might be Air France, or any other website. They are hosted on a particular server or a particular system. And these systems, aside the fact that they host applications, because this website, we don't call them websites so we call them web app. When we say web application, just know that I'm referring to a website. So all these web applications, they're hosted. And what do we host? We don't create the application and put it there. No, you only host their files and folders, and that is what you guys access. And that's why when you put in the domain name www.google.com, it takes you to the page. It takes you to the file which has been hosted on that particular server that sits in your IT room. That same way you saw, just relate google.com with whatever web application you guys uses in your organization. So we have these files and folders on there. Aside the files and folder for applications, we might have our file and folders, maybe the one we use in work. Okay, I want to access this file. I've saved an Excel sheet on the server so that every other person in the organization can also make use of it. I do not want to save it on my own system. So that's why we make use of the server. Aside that, we make use of the server as a domain controller, which, when you join an organization, they give you a system. You are able to log into the system using your username and password. But this username and password needs to be checked by the server before you are allowed to log into the system. So at some point, maybe you've had these instances in the past where somebody gets sacked in the organization and is trying to put in the username and password and is not being allowed to sign into to the system. So because no one came to your system to change your username and password. However, there is actually a place on the server where your username and password resides, and it's there. They've made the modification. So the server has a lot of functions, just the same way you have your laptop. All this thing I just talked about can be done using that particular laptop, that your laptop. So now all these servers I've been talking about, your laptop, and some other thing. Let's say we want to back up our file, the same way you guys use this Google Drive to back up your files, your folders. You use Google Photos to save, your photos. All these things we do not want to have the physical, system here, because if I have the physical system here, number one, I will be responsible for, the power. I will be responsible for the network, because for anyone to access my website needs to be on a system where that system must be up and running every time, 24/7, and internet must always be connected to that system. So we are now saying all the servers, all these printers that we know, all these network cables, we want to access them over the internet. And that's what cloud computing has given to you. So instead of you buying a server or a system, putting it inside the office, then manually, or you make sure that it's up and running, you put in some air condition to cool that IT room. No, we only want to rent a space. We only want to just pick up the server. You don't want to care about where the physical system, where the physical network is, you know. So, and that's why the public cloud provider, that's what they are in for. So they manages the physical system, they manages the physical network. We only take advantage of the services, just like you guys take advantage of Google Drive. You don't care, you don't know where the files and folders are stored, you don't know the computer system where they are stored. The only thing you know is when you log into your Google Drive, you want to see your files and folders. And so it's not just anywhere, it's still on a system, but stored in a remote area. And that's what we call, cloud computing. So let's move away from that. Um, so I just talked about the fact that, yes, we have public cloud providers like Microsoft providing Azure, like Amazon providing AWS, like Google providing Google Cloud, like Oracle providing Oracle Cloud. What they do is, yes, you want to use our services. You guys work from home. You don't care. You don't have an office. However, you still want your users. You still want to deploy your application. You still want your users to, have a server in the office where they can save their system. You still want users to be able to use your backup system. So that's why it's easy, to employ someone in Nigeria by an organization in the US, and the person works from Nigeria. So the fact that the person can be anywhere, because you don't need to be in the physical location, because even the system that needs to be accessed by that particular person is not in any physical location. And that's why, we say, yes, you can put it in Azure, which is provided by Microsoft. And that's a public cloud because it's accessed by, it is not restricted to a particular organization. Any organization can sign up for an Azure organization. But let's take, for instance, you guys are saying, no, we do not want this because we're since we are the administrator of jumia.com.ng, what if we put our files and folders there, and someone from Conga talks to someone in the data center and they get our files and folders? That means they can copy our system, they can copy whatever we've built. We don't want that kind of thing. So this is our IT room. We want to be able to access those files and folders, those services, those servers, those backup servers, over the internet from anywhere I am. But it's only going to be accessed by people that work in this organization. And that's what we call the private cloud. It's only restricted to a particular organization. So that's the first cloud model that we have, the private cloud, only restricted to just one organization. Then the public cloud I've talked about, two different organizations. Then we have what we call the hybrid cloud. The hybrid in the sense that, yes, the fact that I want to be able to host my application, because we do not want to worry about, if the system is up and running. Just the same way anyone that have hosted the website in the past, like hosting it on, Google, on Hostinger, HostGator, whatever, all these hosting services providers, they also use a virtual machine. They also use a machine. So you are not just hosting your application anywhere. You know, you will be provided with a space on their server, and that's why you are able to put your file and folders there. That's why you are able to host your application. You know, so that's what they do. So we are looking at the fact that yes, we have a public facing application. So when I say public facing application, is an application that is used, is publicly available to everyone, even those ones that is not in an organization. So when I talk about private application or internal application, they are applications that are consumed only by people that works in the organization. So let's say we have a public facing application, and because we have some secret on that application that we don't want anyone from anywhere to be able to have access to or something. you know we are like, if this file and folder get into maybe the public cloud, it might not be that secure. Someone can go in there and pick it up. So let's publish our own server, or publish our IT room, or turn our data center, our IT room, into the cloud. That means we'll put our applications on there and people can access from anywhere. Yeah, so we're creating what we call a private cloud. However, you still want to take advantage of using a public cloud. And one of the reasons why you want to take advantage of using a public cloud, some of the benefits we'll be talking about after now, where you want to make sure your application is always available in the sense that, the um, since the server will always be up and running at the data center. You don't care if what air condition they're using there, the power. They always make sure that your application is up and running. No matter what is going on there, you will not do anything. So we want to push some application or some of our backup into the public cloud so that it's easily accessible and always available to us. And also, we want to host some of our files and folders or our application on our own private cloud. So in that sense, we'll say you are taking advantage of the hybrid cloud model. So when we use the cloud that is restricted to just an organization with a public cloud, then you've made use of, or you are leveraging on what we call the hybrid cloud. So this is just a comparison. They're just talking about the fact that when you use the public cloud, because it's pay per consumption, it is what you use that you pay for. And that's why you can see no capital expenditure. We'll still talk about the capex, the opex, and the difference. But when you use a private cloud, just take it for instance, back in the days when we have an IT where you need to purchase that server, you need to purchase those network cables, the air condition, that we use to, make sure that the IT room is always cool. You need to purchase maybe solar panel, solar batteries, generators, just to make sure that power is always available there. So you need to spend a lot. So that's what we call the capital expenditure. So there is an upfront, cost when it comes to private cloud. However, in public cloud, there is no upfront commitment. You only pay for what you use. That's what we call OPEX, operational cost, which you will also incur when you use the private cloud. Then we'll talk about the hybrid cloud, which so you incur some debt, some upfront. You pay some upfront cost, then you still have to run it. So it's just a comparison. You cannot actually look at the documentation and still get more information about the differences. So I just talked about the capex and the opex. This is a typical interview question. You always get it. I'm so sure. So they want to know, what's the difference between the OPEX and the CAPEX. So like I said, CAPEX is upfront spending, while OPEX is what you pay for, while um, your operational cost, while you're making use of this particular service, or when you're using your IT room, you still need to fuel your gen, you still need to pay for power. Sometimes you might need to buy some licenses on all those costing, just. But when you use the public cloud, you only have to pay OPEX. But when you use the private cloud or the hybrid cloud, you know, you will need to pay some upfront money, maybe to get those um, resources that you need in running your application and the likes. So this is just talking about what the cloud consumption model is like. And consumption model is pay as you go. Let's talk about the cloud benefits. What are some of the benefits we get? So in the layman term, we are going to start, I'm just going to, these are all the benefits we have, but I'm going to take our Jamb website, you know, as, an example here. So back in the days, when all of us, I'm sure everyone here or almost everyone wrote Jamb back in the days, and when the result is out, everyone will rush to the cafe. And normally, maybe you can get 30 minutes for 17 naira, or depending on where you stay. For us that stays in the bush, like Ijabode, we get, you know, um, the 30 minutes maybe for 100 naira or so, 1 hour for 120 or 150. And with that, your 1 hour, you might not even get to check your Jamb results within that 1 hour, because everyone is actually in the cafe, in all locations in Nigeria, all locations, trying to check their results. And, it will not be dragging. You guys will not be able to see them say, oh, what's going on today? Everywhere is, people have been here for 3 hours, they've not been able to check their results. No. So because the server or that computer system hosting that application, the resource, the resource is being stretched, in the sense that, a lot of people are trying to check their results. And there is what we call high traffic, because there are a lot of people trying to access that web application at the same time. So it will be dragging, because your laptop comes with a memory, it comes with a CPU, so there will be your memory, when people are trying to access that application, they are eating, they're trying to eat that endpoint, which is your URL, which is hosted on, you know, on your system. So the memory will be increasing. They will be making use of the memory, because, a whole lot of people are trying to, the CPU, there is what we call the CPU percentage. That means once your system is working, sometimes you guys will notice it. You get a point to that your system will just be hanging, and you say, this 2 gig system, and that's why most of us, we are buying our mobile phone also. When you put in some games on there, at some point it will hang. You need to force it to go off, and when it comes up again, it start behaving normal, because everything that you have opened on that system, on that phone, has actually eat up, the percentage, the CPU percentage of your phone or your system. So that's the same way, traffic comes into the web application. Just the same way you open a whole lot of files and folders on your system, and your system starts, slowing down, start dragging, then you need to turn it off, because at that particular time, whatever you have opened on your system, whatever you have opened on your phone, is more than what the system can, do with. And that's the same way the Jamb server or that computer system that was hosting that Jamb application then was behaving. But when people start accessing, trying to access that particular server, everyone is trying to access just one particular system at that time, just one particular system. And so it will get to a point that it will not be able to serve any request. So that's why people will find it difficult to check their results. If you want that particular Jam site to work perfectly that time, they'll need to go to Ikeda. They'll need to buy more server, buy more servers, maybe 3, 4 servers to host that particular application. But it doesn't make any sense. So that's one of the benefits if you are hosting that particular application, that same application in the cloud. When it gets to that point, you can actually spin up another virtual machine to continue hosting that application. That means at that particular time, because it's online now, you can add more machine, then add more machine to cater for the incoming traffic. That means you are saying when there is more than the normal traffic coming into this application, please create another virtual machine to host that same website. That means at that particular time, you might have 2, 3, 4, 5 machines hosting one application. And there's what we call a load balancer. That load balancer, these are some of the things we'll talk about, under networking. And that's why I said, when you get to administrator, we go in deep. We talk about more services than we've talked about now. So what the load balancer in the layman term, what the load balancer does is sit in front of all that system. And okay, let me explain this. Okay, so let's say you have a building that has seven. Okay, don't let me even. For most of us in the UK, when you take a train, when you get to where you're going, you need to go out of the train station, and each of these train stations has where you need to scan your ticket to go out. If what they are doing is they just only have one point where everybody will have to go out from, everybody will be on a single line. But this, we have different points. Most of them, let's say when you go to London, you might have 6, 7, 8 points where, you don't need to wait for everyone before you can scan. So 7 people can scan at the time and go in. Everybody is still going into the same place. However, we have different points we can scan from. So that's what the load balancer does. It's trying to say everybody cannot go in from here. So when everybody is trying to come into that application, I will be the one to redirect you to where you need to access. So we can have maybe 5 virtual machines hosting that same application. And when everyone is trying to access that server or that application, I'll be the one to send them to different virtual machine that is hosting that application. That means it's load balancing, is doing a load balancing. Is making sure that the load that is going into one machine is not more than the one going to the other machine. So everyone will be able to access the application, without the application dragging. So you will not even notice that there are lots of people trying to check their Jamb website at that particular time, because there will be more than one machine that will have been created, to host that particular website. But it was not possible then because we were using physical machine that was actually inside the Jamb office. So that's what we call scalability. So it's scalable in the sense that it can scale out, it can have more machine created to cater for the incoming traffic. Same way, and when we want it to scale back, when there is no traffic again, when people have checked their when they have checked their Jamb results, then the next day, there will be lesser people trying to access that same website. So we need that, all those virtual machines that will be created, those additional virtual machines that will be created to be discarded. So that's where the elasticity comes in. So it goes back, to the way it was before. Then high availability, it means that when you put your applications in there or you put your files and folders in there, you it will always be available. How many times have you guys tried to access your Google Drive and you don't have access to it? So it's always available, always available. And there are lots of things that made this happen. The replication strategies that we talked about, where you have just one application being replicated into different data centers, being replicated within different zones, being replicated within different regions. So predictability in the sense that um, how much you pay at the end of the month if you are making use of this resource, Azure will tell you. The cloud provider will tell you if you continue using this for 24 hours, this is how much you will pay at the end of the day or at the end of the month. So it's predictable. And the governance is just the same way we have legislators, making rules in the upper chamber. They're saying, okay, you do not want, people to be able to use crypto again or Binance again because it is the reason why the naira is, going down against the dollar. They are making laws, and when you are found guilty, you might be arrested for still using it. So there are laws. So the same way they have laws in there, that's the same way we have laws within the Azure environment. So you can make a policy to say this virtual machine, because our organization is in UK, nobody should be able to create a virtual machine outside the UK region. So you are making a policy, or this virtual machine that we have created, nobody should be able to delete it. So we make that policy, we create a policy, and if anyone tries to delete it, it will not be possible. And same thing as manageability, it comes with that. You are able to manage what everything does, the users in there, the groups. Then talk about security. There are multiple securities in place to make sure your files and folders are actually secure. Then we move on to the cloud service type. We talked about different service type that we have in the cloud. A very good example of the type of cloud service that we use is PaaS, which is we are being provided with a platform and we make use of this platform. Platform like Google Drive. So the only thing you do is you put in your files and folders there, your Google Photos, you put in your photos. You don't know if where the virtual machine that is hosting that particular, Google Drive is, or those information is. You don't care, but it's only a platform that has been provided to you. Just same way you want to host your application and you want to go and host it on HostGator, Hostinger, whatever hosting site, So we are providing you with a platform where you can host your application. You don't need to know where, or you don't need to know, or you do not want access to the full system where you host the application. You just want to rent a space on the system. And if you check your Google Drive, they will tell you have only 15 gig, or 15 gig, space. That means they are only giving you 15 gig of space on the storage account, maybe on the hard drive on that system. And that's the platform. The same way you have your Gmail. Now, you're not even bringing your files and folders because the file, all those emails that you see, they are files. And those files are stored somewhere, but you don't have access to those files. The only thing you have access to is the front end where you read your emails. The only thing you need when you set up your Gmail, is your username and password. Then you start receiving emails. It's not as if you start pushing files and folders. Even when you send files and folders, you are not the one, because like I said, those messages are actually some files and folders. Same way, if you go on your phone, if you go inside, I don't know because I don't use Apple, but for Android, when you go to the main folder, you go to the Android folder, you would see that each of these applications that you use, like the WhatsApp, there is actually a data that's been created for them, a file that has been created for them that stores all your messages, So that's the same way. Now you are provided with just, you are only asked to put in your username and password. Then you can start having access, to that. So that's what we call the SaaS, which is the application is ready made for you. You don't need anything, you are not the one providing the files and folder. But for Google Drive, you'll be the one to provide the files and folder. You'll be the one to provide your photos, you know. So it is what you are provided into Google Drive that you see. But for Gmail, it's different. People can send you any email, you are not the one responsible for the files there. Then let's now say, yes, I have a Gmail. We've talked about software as a service. Then we've talked about platform as a service, where I'm being provided with a platform like Google Drive or the likes. What if I want access to a physical machine, not a physical machine, a virtual machine? I want to be able to, create my own hard drive, use that system just the same way we have a system. We want to host our application. We want to be the one to create, because we have different applications that we want to host, and we want to host all of them on the same machine. So we want that machine. Or don't just provide me with 15 gig of data on Google Drive. No, I want to create a storage account where I'll be the one to manage, the number of gigs that goes to everyone. Provide me with that, underlying infrastructure or underlying resources. And when you take advantage of that kind of thing, it is not the file and folder now. You want to be the one in charge. You want to be able to have access to the underlying resource. Then we'll say we want to leverage on the infrastructure as a service. So when we provide you with the underlying technology that hosts that platform and that hosts that application, then you have access to infrastructure as a service, technology. And that's it. So they talked about the shared responsibilities, which, so what are some of the shared responsibilities when you use the IaaS? Because we've provided you with a system, you'll be the one to, power off and power on that system. You'll be the one to put operating system there. You'll be the one to manage the security, manage access, you know, you'll be the one to, if anything happens on that system, like security need updates, you'll be the one to. So you are still managing a whole lot. The only thing you don't have access to is the physical machine, the network that is connected to that physical machine and the data center. But you still manage some things. When you use pass, you don't care about the physical machine. You don't care about the login to the machine. You only, or have you, whenever you want to access your Google Drive, have you been asked to put in your password and username for the machine, not your Google Drive now, for machine? No, because you don't know where the machine is. Then the same way, when you use the SaaS, you don't care about where you want to deploy or push in your files and folder. You don't care about the files and folders. You only on the WhatsApp, you don't care about the files and folders. What you care about is the messages that you're sending within that particular application. And so those are the differences. So there are things you care about when it comes to each of the services. And that brings us to this, where when you use the on-premises environment, which we talked about, like the IT office that we own, then you are the one. You can see who is responsible. You can see the customer. The customer is responsible because you'll be the one in charge of setting up your IT room. You'll be the one in charge of providing a network to make sure your servers are connected. You'll be the one in charge to provide the servers itself, the operating system that will be running on the server, if it's Windows, if it's Linux, all those things, you'll be the one in charge. But when you use the cloud, there are some that are managed by Microsoft, like the physical host, physical machine, physical data center. So if you are using IaaS, because we've given you a virtual machine, you still be the one in charge of the operating system, the network, the application, and the likes. But when you make use of, the pass, like you're only making use of the platform, there is nothing you need to do with the operating system. You don't care. You know, you're just saying, okay, please, I would also need a platform that has Linux system. I want to deploy it. So you don't care which physical machine or anything. Then for SaaS, like Gmail, you have access to the data, those information, those your email, that machine that you use to connect your email, or your phone that you need to connect to your email. And that's why they have devices there. Then your username and password, which are your accounts. And like I said, in the cloud, we don't call them username and password, we say your identity, that your identity. Then yeah, identity and directory, where at least when you go into Gmail, you still manage some of the parts, like the Google Drive, the photos, at least some of the identity, you know. So that's the fact about this. Then um, for SaaS, you still host your application, even when a platform has been provided for you. You still decide on how to network or connect that application to the world, if you want it to be open to everybody or you want it just to be internal. Those are just the differences, depending on what you manage, the kind of service that you provide. All right, so that brings us to the end of the first module. This is the learning part 2, which is, I think this is the most serious one there. So we'll be talking about a architecture. Can you guys still see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah.
You can see it.
You just want yourself 100 pounds. Send your account. Don't send it though. All right, so let's talk about the architectures and the services. So we just talked about the service types. We've explained the IaaS, the PaaS, and the SaaS. Those are the types of services. However, let's now talk about the services under each of these types. Under each of these types. So we'll talk about the resources, then we'll talk about the architecture when it comes to Azure. So some of the things we need to know about, for the learning parts. Here we'll be talking about the regions, the availability zones, the subscriptions, the resource group, and the compute and networking, which is one, some of the resources or the services under each of the service type we've discussed. And we'll talk about the storage, the typical example, which we all know, the Google Drive. Then we'll talk about how do you access your application, how do you access your resources, so that your username and password, which I said will refer to as the identity. Then we'll talk about the access. So when you use your identity to sign in, or something I would say to log in or to authenticate, then when you try to access that portal, you use your username and password, then you'll be allowed access to the portal when your username and password has been checked with what they have. Then we'll say you have an access. Then from there, we'll talk about the security behind this, to make sure that that access, is not compromised. So let's take a look at. So, like I said, I intentionally did not want you guys to create an Azure account. Basically, we've been taking advantage of a Microsoft Learn Sandbox, because for this course, we do not need to at least use our own Azure account to do whatever exercise we need to do. Because when you do that, you are going to be asked to provide your credit card or something. You'll be assigned a subscription, which will only last you for 30 days. I need those subscriptions for this particular course, in this next course. I'll we'll be jumping into next month or so. From this month. So we have the Microsoft Learn Sandbox, which is what we've been using. But at least this is when you create an Azure account, that means you've created an organization in the cloud. So we have different the Azure account is free, but you can actually buy some licenses. We'll still talk about those licenses, and that's what we'll, at least for now, just know we have Azure free account and we have student account, which I think most of us, people that are still students, might be able to take the Azure free account. Yeah. So this walkthrough is just to explain how you can actually create an Azure free account. And I think I've got a YouTube video in there on my YouTube channel where I um, did this walkthrough on how to create your Azure free account. However, you can just go to azure.microsoft.com or portal.azure.com, and create a new account from there. So not difficult to just take a look at that. So maybe during the walkthrough of those exercises. Then the sandbox, which is what one of the exercises we'll be taking a look at. How do you activate this your sandbox? Because without activation, you will not be able, to use that particular sandbox. So here we explore some other ways of accessing our resources. So, but for now, just we'll still come back to the exercise at the end of the day. So let's talk about the Azure architecture, some of the things we need to talk about. So here we'll be talking about the regions, the region pairs, then the sovereign regions, what we call the availability zones, the Azure data centers, Azure resources and resource groups, the subscriptions, management groups, and the hierarchy of these subscriptions, resource groups, and the management zone. I'm going to explain all these, and you can just relate with maybe a live scenario or something. Maybe not really related to the cloud, but just for you to have an understanding. Now, I think I'm going to use the same example I used during the class. In Nigeria, you want to rent an apartment. Then when you want to rent this apartment, when you go in there, majority of the houses you'll find at home, they do not come with, the beddings, the TVs, or whatever furnitures, they are not furnished. Let me put it that way. So the only thing you are renting is the building, or, the space within that particular building. So let's take that space that you are renting as your organization. Just the same way, let's say an office, so when you want to set up an office, you rent a space, then there is no furniture in that particular office space. So you'll be the one to at least bring in, your bed, your tables, chairs, TVs, PlayStation, whatever you need to bring to the house. You need cash to be able to purchase all those. So all those beds I just talked about. So the building itself, before you can go into the building, you need the key. Or before you can go into the flat, you need the key to that flat. So let's take that key to that flat as your username and password, which is your access, which is your identity. Take it that way. So when you go into the house, you need those beds, PlayStations, whatever, resources. So take all those beds, chairs as a resource, so each of them, take them as a resource. So we put in those resources like the TV, the bowl, whatever you that makes your life comfortable in your home. Take each of them as a resource. Now, in that particular flat now, we have what we call a room called the living room, or which we know, most of us know as the sitting room. Then we have the rooms, toilet, the bathroom, all those, take them as, a resource group. Because what resource group does is logically, segregating or logically different or arranging your resources. So when you put in your resource, before you can create a resource, you need to put them into a resource group. That's the same way, because if the landlord just built the house, and it's just open, there is no difference between the toilet, and the living room. It will be like, what kind of house is this? But to make life comfortable, they've actually demarcated every room, the living room. So take that as the sitting room or the living room is a resource group, and within that resource group, there are resources that are pertaining to that particular resource, to that particular living room. So you put in, your chair, your toilet. At least you will not want to go and put a TV inside the bathroom. I don't know if people do that, but you don't want to go and put TV inside the bathroom. Um, your um, your cooker, they'll be in the kitchen, and your kitchen is another resource group. That's the same way we put our resource group. But we don't have a living room, we don't have a kitchen in our yard. At least you want to logically arrange your resources to say this resource group belongs to this department, this resource group belongs to this particular location, within our organization. Just way to logically arrange your resources. Then now we've talked about the resources, and we've talked about the resource group. All these resources that you have brought in, your TV, your chair, your don't forget that you've used some particular amount to purchase these particular resources. That cost, that's your card that you're using, to purchase on Amazon, to buy all these resources. Take that as your subscription. Without that, you will not be able, to purchase any resource in Azure. And that's the same thing the subscription does. So you need a subscription. If you guys notice that without the consent subscription in the Microsoft Learn environment, you will not be able to create any resource. So that's the hierarchy. Before you can create a resource, you need to have a subscription. Then you create a resource. Within that subscription, you need to create a resource group. And within that resource group, you need to create a resource. And that's the way it is in the cloud, the same way it is, when you're setting up your flat. So you need at least some money, to purchase all those beds, all those TV I talked about. That's the subscription now. Now, let's now say within that particular house, there are 4 flats that you only controls. Maybe you are doing Airbnb. You are the one managing, oh, this flat 1 doesn't have a TV. Let me go and purchase it. This flat 2. So you have access to all the flats. You can manage whatever goes into this flat, based on your discretion, because you are the one, that have the buying power. So because you want to be able to manage all those resources in each of those flats, will give you access to all the flats. And that's what we call the management group. When you want to manage multiple resources, at the same time, then it needs to come under, you need to have access under what we call the management group. So one management group can have multiple subscription, and each subscription can have multiple resource groups, and each resource group can have multiple resources. So that's just the hierarchy. So it's the management group, 2, the subscription, then from subscription to the resource group, then the resource group to the resource itself. So I'm sure we've talked about Azure resources, resource group, subscription, management group, and the hierarchy now. Now let's move up. Let's move away from the flat scenario. Let's go into the Azure environment now, or let's go back to our IT center. So we are Larry, please go ahead, please.
Thank you. There was a time, although I read it and you said that you can only have a resource in a particular resource in a particular resource group. You cannot have two resources in or one resource in two resource group. Is that?
Don't misquote.
No, you didn't say it now. I've had it in the past class.
Okay, so this is it. This is it. I want to create. You can have a TV in your living room. That same TV cannot be in your bedroom at the same time or in your kitchen at the same time. Let's say you have a separate kitchen and a separate living room, or let's say in the houses where we have two living rooms. You know, when you buy your TV and put it in one of the living room, you cannot have that TV in two rooms at the same time. What you can do
Yeah,
is, yes, you can
that's
remove
my
that
question.
TV
That's my
from the
question now.
living room. Yes, so you can have just one, a particular resource. I can have multiple TVs within my living room. You understand?
Okay.
That's the same way we can have multiple resources within our resource group. However, a particular resource will only exist in within just one resource group. So when you
So
want to use,
my
go
question
ahead.
is now is that the TV inside the living room,
Yeah,
can I still buy another TV? Can I
inside that
subscribe for another TV in the
and
in
put
this
it
in the
yes,
bedroom?
yes, you can.
Okay, okay.
So that means you can have multiple resources within different, within the same resource group. You understand? You can even have that particular TV and you can buy multiple ones and put it, if you want to have three television within that living room, it's fine. That means you have multiple resource, within that particular resource group. What your resource group is doing is just segregating, your resources.
Mr. Babafem, you didn't get what I'm saying. I'm not saying I know you can have multiple TV in a living room. Yes. What I'm saying is that if you buy a TV in the living room at the same time buy a TV in the kitchen.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Okay, okay.
So I just use the flat scenario, if we are using the resource scenario in Azure, we are saying that our resource group, we just want to use it to logically separate, maybe our IT, or our department. We are saying these resources, we'll name the resource group IT resource group. We name another resource group sales department resource group. That means if the IT resource group has a virtual machine, the sales department resource group can also have a virtual machine. You understand? So we can have, it's just to logically separate the resources. So you can have multiple TVs in your TV in living room and still have multiple in your bedroom. So it doesn't matter. So you can have different resources, in different resource group. The only thing is a particular resource that you have within a resource group. You cannot have it in two different resource group at a particular time. The only thing is, all these resources that we create comes with a tag. So if I create a resource, a phone now, your Android phone, you know, it only belongs to one person. Two people cannot use it at a time. That's the same way it is in Azure. So our resource group is just logically separating our resources. So it doesn't mean that a particular resource spin up with this particular resource group. We cannot have a replicate of it in another resource group. You understand? We can have a replicate of it within. So you can have a virtual machine, um, 5,000 virtual machine within your organization, and all of them are just with on different resource groups. Okay, please. Okay, I can see your hand.
Hello.
Yeah, can hear you.
Yeah. I just want to understand in the course of those lectures that we've had before,
Mm-hmm.
you said everything we do on Azure,
Mm-hmm.
everything we create like a virtual machine storage, they are
Yeah,
regarded as a resource or a resources.
yeah,
So,
so
so, but I remember one day when I created a virtual machine, it automatically, and you've said it before, created a VNet network.
it created
So
another
now,
resource for you. Yeah.
yes. So now, instead of going to home, for instance, where you go to resource group,
Mm-hmm.
you will see the
All those
virtual
resources
machine and
and
the
other resources.
VNet.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so what I'm trying to understand is that sometimes I'm confused. Is resource group something we can also create on our own for
Yes,
easy management, like you said, tagging
yes,
and all those stuffs?
yes.
Or once we just create a particular virtual machine or a particular resources based on our own subscription now, it automatically goes to the same resource group. And if you now want to separate them from that resource group and put it in another resource group, you can then go and design another resource group or something. That's what I'm just trying to
No.
understand.
So this is it. Resource groups are not automatically created for you.
Okay.
It's because of the fact that we are using the Microsoft Learn. Microsoft,
Okay.
that
Okay.
concierge, is it has created its own resource group that you must use
Mm-hmm.
in the course of the exercise. Do you
Okay.
understand? Now,
Yes.
there are some resources when we create them, like you said, a virtual machine, just like your system at home, it cannot work alone. You know, it needs an hard drive in there, which in Azure is a different resource on its own because you can create an hard drive or a storage account without creating a machine. You can create a VNet without creating a machine. So it's a resource on all those ones are resources on their own. However, your virtual machine will not work except it works with other resources like your VNet, your storage account, which is the hard drive in this case. You understand? And that's
Mm.
why when you create a virtual machine, within that course of creating a virtual machine, it will create resources like the VNet, the storage account. Also, you did not check, you know, it will tell you, what are some of the resources that will be created when the virtual machine is created. I will, when we're doing the exercise, I will explain each of these resources where you find each of these resources that will be created for you. You can even name it. You understand? So
Mm.
if I'm creating a virtual machine now, because there are other resources that are dependent or this virtual machine is dependent on, they will all be created within the same resource group because they work together. Do you
Okay.
understand? Yeah. But if it's something that they are not working together, so you can create a VNet in a separate resource group, create a virtual machine in a create a storage account in another. But for resources that works together, like a virtual machine needs an hard drive, it needs a VNet. All of them must be created within the same resource group, for them to function. So
Okay.
resource group is just to logically separate your resources.
Mm.
Do you understand? So, like I've said, you can create your own resource and name it or your Lua, then have a virtual machine in that resource group, have a storage account. On that same subscription, I can create my own resource group and name it Babafemi and have almost the same thing that you have, just like a replica of what you have in your resource group in my other, in my own resource group also. Do you understand? So, but
Okay.
because a virtual machine depends on some other resources to function, that's why you will notice that when you create a virtual machine, a storage account, an hard drive, a VNet, an NSG, a public IP is created alongside that virtual machine because it's needed by that machine to function.
Okay. Thank you.
We understand. It looks like it's confusing, kind of, right?
Thank you.
Any other question? Any other person need clarification? Don't be shy. All right, so I'll go ahead to continue then. So, like I said, the hierarchy is we have a management group. Then under each of these management group, we have subscriptions. under these subscriptions, we have resource groups. Then under the resource groups, we have the resources. So we talked about those ones. Now let's go back to the region peer availability zones. We have a company in Nigeria, or yes, or in the UK, or in Nigeria that is making use of let's take a, for example, the last election. They used AWS to host the IREX application. So what this does is this application is to we talked about the fact that one of the benefits of the cloud is high availability. That means when you have your application in there, just the same way your Google Drive is always available for you to use, and that's why we refer to it as high availability. When you put in, let's say we host that application in one of our IT room that we'll refer to as a data center, we host it in one of the IT room. Now, what we want is, because this application, we want it to be available at every time. Our organization has an office in Lagos, so we host that application in Lagos. Then our organization still has an office in Ondo and Abeokuta. Then what we do is, or let's say it's just a file, because we don't want people to delete that file and folder. We don't want issues. We want that file to be always available to us. So when we put in our files and folder in that Lagos server, we'll take a replica of it. Then we'll go and put it in the Abeokuta data center and the Ondo data center. It means that if there is a downtime in Lagos, let's say there is a riot and we have to, run for our life, we need to turn off the server and run away. That means there will be a failover to the one in Abeokuta. People can still access that file and folder because it's hosted in our data center in Abeokuta and Ondo. So the combination of the data center in Lagos, Ondo, and Abeokuta is referred to as a zone. So we'll say we have our file and folder within the southwest zone. And that's where the availability zones come in place. So these zones makes our application, our file and folder always available, because we have those file and folders in different locations within that zone. So within the southwest zone, we have 3 different data centers. The combination of these data centers is what we call the availability zone. Then we're saying, what if there is a riot in the southwest? That means our files and folders will not be available. Our application is not going to be available. Let's create another zone in the southeast, which will comprise of a data center in Imo, in Anambra, and maybe in Abia State. So the same thing we've done in Abeokuta, Lagos, and Ondo. We'll replicate the same thing in Oka, in Abakaliki, and maybe Onitsha or something. So that's another zone, which is the southwest zone, southeast zone. Then we want to replicate the same thing in maybe the north central. We take advantage of Kogi and maybe Kaduna and maybe Abuja. So that's another zone. So now we have 3 zones. The combination of all these zones, is what we call a region. So that means Nigeria is a region with 3 different zones: one in the southwest, one in the southeast, and one in the north center. That means that's our file and folders, or that's our application has been replicated within that particular region. That means it's being hosted on different servers in different data centers within different zones in a particular region. So we are taking Nigeria as a region. We want to go to Ghana now to create the same set of thing. You know, maybe Ghana also have in southwest, southeast, south. We want to go to Accra, then Elubu, then maybe Aflao, and create the same thing. Then all these zones within Ghana, the combination of all these zones within Ghana is called a region also. So Nigeria is a region, Ghana is a region. The combination of both is what we call the region pair, which are 300 miles away. Region pair. So the combination of both is a region pair. That means one region come together, form what we call a region pair. So then we'll talk about the sovereign regions, which is only for the government, like the US government, the Chinese government. So I just discussed everything here. If you have any question at the time I'm scrolling through this, pages, please let me know. Larry, please, you can go ahead, please.
My question is that I read about primary region and secondary region, so I didn't really get that difference between the primary and second. I mean, in region peers.
Yeah, so in region
Primary,
pair,
secondary. Well, as one will feed one will not feed the other. I mean, I didn't really understand. If you can
okay, so
please
this
put
is
some
it.
light.
IREX that was used in hosting our maybe IREX, that application, that's INEC used, let's say we have it deployed in a region in Nigeria, a Nigerian region. So what we do is, because it's being hosted in the Nigeria region, we want another region, to host that same application. But it's going to, because we cannot have two applications running at the same time. We need one as a backup. You get what I'm saying? So should in case that there's downtime in Nigeria, we want the one in Ghana to come up, and start and replace the one in Nigeria until everything is stabilized in Nigeria. Yeah, we'll start, that one we can switch over back to Nigeria. So, but the fact that the Nigeria host is the one that is active, we'll refer it to as the primary region. We only have the one in Ghana now will not be active because we cannot have two instances running at the same time. We need one to be in passive mode, like to be on standby mode. That when there is a downtime in this region, I will kick up. But we need to make sure that all the content that we have in the Nigeria region is replicated to the Ghana region. So that one is the secondary region will only stay on standby mode, but it will have the updates, all the updates that we have in the primary region being replicated to the secondary region. But it's just in standby mode, it's not in active mode. You understand? And that's why we refer to it as primary region and secondary region. So if at any point in time there is a downtime in Nigeria, let's say the Greeks, that Greeks that always collapse, collapses again, and there is a national power outage, want to switch over to our secondary region, which has always been in standby mode. So at that time, we will do a switch over, the Ghana region, will now be the active region, which is going to be the primary region at that particular time. And the secondary region will now be the Nigeria region, because that one will now be in the standby mode. Do you understand? Does that answer your question?
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
All right. Any other question? Please don't be shy. Just if you don't want to ask, you can type it in in the chat. I can read it all from there and just answer your question. So if you don't want to unmute your mic, please. So now we'll go ahead. So about this. So this is all the regions we've talked about. These are regions. I actually have 60 plus regions spanning over 140 countries at this particular time. Though we only have two regions in Nigeria, in Africa, which are the ones in South Africa as of now. So these are the regions. Within this particular region, we have multiple zones, multiple data centers, same with the other regions that you can see. And what they do is to make sure, as you can see, regions are made of one or more data center in close proximities. So we just want to make sure that your application, your servers are always up and running. Larry, please go ahead, please.
I can see, like you said, I can see we have two regions in Africa.
Yeah.
Does that mean all other countries are just zones?
We don't have any other. We don't have zones in Nigeria. That's why when you want to create anything on Azure, you will not see Nigeria. You will not see any other African country. It's only the South Africa. So all the zones are even within the South Africa region. You cannot.
So that means you only have data centers in Nigeria.
We don't even have a data center.
Wow.
Azure doesn't have that. Or let me put it that way. There are data centers in Nigeria, but none of them belongs to Microsoft. So Microsoft.
Okay, that means we only connect through South Africa region. If you want to connect to Azure.
So you see, most of the people will leverage on the Europe region. So when you want to set up, just right when you want to create your virtual machine or any other resource within the Microsoft Azure environment, you will see Europe, South Africa. You will not see any other African country because Microsoft doesn't have a data center, in any other African country aside South Africa. So, so you connect to the region that is close to your customer. So most times we make use of UK, Europe, and the likes because I feel it's more closer than us than South Africa. So availability zones, physically separate data centers within the same region, like I've actually explained. So we have data centers, then we have one availability, the southwest, the southeast, north center, like I've actually explained. Then the region peers 300 miles away, just an example. I only use Nigeria and Ghana as an example. It doesn't mean Microsoft has, region within that particular, in those countries. I only use them as an example, just for us to explain the region, the zones, the data centers and the region. So we have, region peers, combination of two regions that are 300 miles away. That's what we call the region peer. Then the sovereign regions, like I said, so this is typically or restricted to the government of US and China. So those are regions only meant for the government. So this is a walkthrough. I'm sure you guys should have seen this, but we can still take a look at it. This just tells you, where the region is, what are some of the region that you have. So we'll still do this walkthrough. Let's go ahead. Then these are some of the resources that you can deploy. I talked about the fact that each services, the infrastructure as a service, the PaaS, all these guys have resources that are aligned to them. And so we have different resources, the virtual machine, the storage account. These are resources you can create on Azure. This explain, just the way I've explained to you, these are things you use, to build up your solutions. The resource groups, like I said, it's just like a logical, container. to manage your resources. So you can see just the same question you asked, Larry. You can see we have the web app within this particular resource group, and we still have another web app within the particular resource group. So we can have a resource group named Larry. We can have another one names name maybe Michael. So the resource group is just to logically separate your resources. Then we talked about the subscriptions, like I've already explained. You know, um, before you can create a resource group, as you can see, you need a subscription, and within this subscription is where you are going to be billed. So you get charged for any resource you're creating using within that subscription. So we have different subscriptions. You get an invoice. You can manage the billing, and so you are only billed for the resources you've created or you use within that particular subscription. And I talked about the management group, which I said the management group, if you want to manage multiple subscriptions at the same time, you need to assign them to a management group, and that's what you can see. That's the hierarchy. And within a particular subscription, you can have multiple source group, and within the particular resource group, you can have multiple resources.
Excuse me.
Yeah, right. Please.
Can you please go back to the previous one? Yeah. Can you please shed more light on the dev subscription, test subscription, and the production subscription?
Don't worry,
please?
it's just a name. It's just a name.
All right.
So, like I said, you can have multiple, you can have multiple resource. So what we do in the cloud, or what we do as an IT person, is when we create an application, we don't just create a production application, because there will be regular updates on that particular application. So we want to test that application that is working fine before we push it to customers. And that's why we create what we call the dev environment. So in the dev environment, the developers, do their development, they do their testing on their own. Then in the test environment, which you can see here, we have what we call the quality assurance guy, the QAs. So they owns the test environment. They do all their testing. Yes, the developer said yes, the application is working fine. But before we push it to production, we push it to the public, we want to do our testing. So we'll create our own test Azure environment. We put in our subscriptions in there, or within the same Azure organization, we create our resource subscription, and we name it, test subscription. There is no chance for error in production environment, and that's why we leverage on different environments. So we create the dev, we create the test. Then, if everything is certified that is working fine, then we can now push it to the production environment. So do not worry about these are just naming convention for now, and that's why I skipped it. So it's just for you to understand the hierarchy. That management group, multiple subscriptions, one subscription, multiple resource group, one resource group, multiple resources. So this is just so I'm not skipping all those exercises because at the end of the day we're going to look at the exercises. Then let's talk about this compute and networking. This compute is just a type of service that we have within the cloud environment. So now the network is also a type of service that we have within the cloud environment. So we all know about networking, at least we use Wi-Fi, we use our mobile network. How do your mobile network works? So are you saying, it's just connected to, to where is it connected to? So these are questions we need to ask ourselves. There are still for each of your mobile device or your phone, they still get what we call an IP address. If you check your system or your phone, before you can browse, you need an IP address. So which device is assigning an IP address to my phone? Because I'm not connected to any physical. Yes, you are not connected. However, there are data centers. We all see marks, at least there are data centers where all this connection has been made for us. There is a router there that still distributes these IP addresses so that our phones can connect to the internet. Just the same way our network does. So that's where the networking comes in. So we'll be talking about the virtual network, not a physical, because we cannot see the cables that are used in connecting now. Same way we want to, I do not want to be carrying my system all around. Anywhere I go, anywhere I travel to, if I get hold of a physical system, I want to be able to connect to a virtual machine because I use that virtual machine for my work. So I can create a virtual machine which comes under the compute. So let's just take a look at this. So there are different compute types, but the major one that we are all used to now is that virtual machine. But there are different ones that we talk about within during the class where I talked about all these services that have memory, operating system, and the likes are referred to as the compute type of service. Where we talk about the container instance, the virtual machine itself, and functions. Okay, let me just use these two. So Azure compute services are computing services that provides, or let's say there are services that provide computing services, just like the processor, the memory, they have these disks and the likes. Just like you have your um, storage accounts, when you create your storage account, when you create your virtual machine has a memory, it has a processor. Your app service has an operating system, even when you do not have, when you want to host your application, it's a platform now that has been provided for you. However, the fact that you are not seeing the virtual machine that is hosting that platform doesn't mean that platform, when you want to request for it, they will ask you, do you need a Windows platform or a Linux platform? So it still comes with an operating system, but you will not have access to that physical machine to manage the operating system, but they will provide that platform to you to say, yes, this is it. So that's the same way. So we talked about the container instance where I said back in the days when we want to host our application, one application goes with one server, but that means we are wasting a whole lot of money. Then if we are to host like 17 applications, are we saying we need to buy 17 servers? That's a waste of money. Then came what we call virtualization. Virtualization in the sense that we want to logically, segregate our physical machine, to be able to accommodate more than one application. So you virtualize your machine. So we divide it into what we call a chunk, into chunks. Then within these chunks, we can now, host one application per each of these, chunk that we've done. So at that point, we're hosting like 4 applications on one particular server with the use of, that Hyper-V service on our Windows machine. Don't worry if this looks like jargon, but it's just to tell you, what the container is. But at that point, we still wanted more, because what if we're able to host maybe 200 applications on just one particular server? Then that's what the container instance, has brought to us. That's where the container instance comes in here. It gives you access to be able to host multiple applications within a particular server, because these container instance are lightweight applications. So don't worry, we'll still talk more about this during the Azure Administrator Lab, but at least for you to
Sorry,
understand.
excuse me. So that means we only have one application per one container instances.
We can have yes, one application per one container instance. Yes.
Okay, okay.
So that means multiple container can be hosted on one particular machine. So that's that. Then how do we now manage? How do we manage these containers? Like my organization, we have over 5,000 containers running. How do we manage these containers? That's too much. So that's where the Azure Kubernetes service comes in. It is used to manage all these containers automatically. So we'll talk about the Azure Kubernetes service. It's this Azure Kubernetes service, just like the Azure B2C I talked about it last time. These are technology where you can even get a job pertaining to it just only to manage containers. It's a very big technology. Then we'll talk about the Azure Virtual Desktop, where yes, you don't need access to the whole machine. You only need access to the applications that you use in working. And we'll spin up what we call a Azure Virtual Desktop, where we'll put in applications. You only have access to the applications that are needed by you to perform your job. You know. So this is just explaining. So when we talk about virtual machine, just like the physical machine you have, virtual machine is just like an emulation that so you are just simulating a physical machine. So that's the only thing. The only difference there is you don't have access to the physical machine itself. Then you talk about the virtual machine skill set. This virtual machine skill set is the best, one of the best technology to resolve issues with jammed website. So what this does is it can scale out automatically for you when like I was explaining the other time, at some point there might be more traffic coming into the organization. And because of this, we want to create more resources to cater for this traffic coming into the organization. So we need at some point to say, once our CPU level reaches 70%, please create another virtual machine for me. And that's what the virtual machine skills are done. So I explained the fact that most of us that are using streaming, and you go through this when you want to go out of the train station or you want to come into the train station, you need to, even when all of us are still coming onto the platform, you need to still use, you need to still access, the platform using maybe your e-ticket or your ticket, So there are different places we can always all go to, but all of us are still coming to one platform. So that's what this does. So it's load balance. So it creates multiple, resources for you to cater for that traffic when there is huge traffic coming into the application. Then when there is less traffic, all those additional virtual machines that have been created for you will be discarded. And that's where um, the virtual machine skill set. Availability set is just for us within one particular data center. We want to have multiple server hosting our virtual machine, and that's it. So let's say we have 5 servers running within that particular data center. We want our virtual machine to be created maybe within each of those virtual of those servers. That means if one is not working, we can switch to the other one. You won't even need to switch. It's switched automatically by Azure, so you won't even know. So when there is time for them maybe to do updates or restart some of the machine, you will not even know that anything like that is going on. You do know when the bank or when your bank says we want to do an upgrade, they will send out communication to say at this so time, our applications might not be available. Because the server hosting that application, they want to update or switch it off at that particular time. And that's why. So, but if you are making use of the cloud, you do not need to do that. You can fail over to another machine. So this creates virtual machine. Talk about the Azure Virtual Desktop already when you are more concerned about the applications that you need rather than the whole machine itself. Container instance. Do not worry yourself more about this. Functions is what we call serverless computing. Serverless computing in the sense that yes, we have when I said something when we started the class, when you want to host your application, you are still hosting the files and folders. And that's what we call, that makes up the application. But people accessing it from outside needs, before they can get to these files and folder, they need to go to maybe a domain name or your mobile application or something like that. But when you use what we call a serverless application, you don't need to create files and folder. That your script, you just post your script directly. Those script that you type in, that's script. So it's not filed now. You are not saving that script as file. You are hosting that particular script. It is not like you are hosting, you are not okay, so it's still file, but you are not compiling. So when we say compile, you are not building your application. You don't need to build it. Don't worry about the build part, but you are not building your application. You are only hosting your script. And that's why we call it serverless computing. You understand? It doesn't require you are only running your code, So this just compares all the type of computers that we have. App service is just a service in Azure that is majorly attributed to hosting your application. So that's why we call it a service. It works with different languages. Then let's talk about the Azure Virtual Network. Just the same way we have it on on-premises, where we have our cables, our router, patch panel for people that have done networking before. But if you're not, at least when you go into the office, they'll give you a cable to plug into your system, to plug into, maybe into the wall, or you connect via Wi-Fi. So how do we? So the same way. That's why when Odua was, Oliofe was asking a question that when it spins off a machine, there's some other resources like the virtual network that was pinned up alongside that virtual machine. Yes, because that machine needs a network to be able to communicate with the internet. And that's what the VNet does. It is not, VNet is not only attached to a virtual machine. We have other resources that make use of VNet also. So here we'll talk about the public access. Like I said, when you want to give access to everyone, then we use what we call the public endpoint. You can see anywhere on the internet. Then if it's just for private within the organization, we make use of the private endpoint. Then we'll say we have virtual network. That's the same way we have network. But we want to separate this network into different chunks. That's what we call the subnet. So that is subnetting, subnetwork. So that's what we call the subnet. So virtual network, when you segregate or when you separate this virtual network into chunks, it's called the virtual subnet. Then VNet peering, we have a global organization. Now, that global organization, let's even go back to our workplace now. Let's say in our workplace, there is an office, maybe the MD office. Yeah, it's on the other side. Let's say we have two buildings. Then the MD office is on the other side. Then we have the IT office on the other building. But MD is not able to access the server. Yes, because it's not on the same network. It's not on our network. Just the same way, when you buy, it may be your router or any network, in your apartment. Your neighbor doesn't have access to it. So you will not be able to connect to, your neighbor computer. But once you give access to your neighbor on the same virtual network, then you'll be able to, just same way if you go on the train, maybe East Midland Airway, Elena, Avanti, or Thameslink. All these guys have, they have Wi-Fi, and they will warn you that once you connect to our Wi-Fi, other people might be able to have access to your mobile or your resource. So because all of you at that particular time are now on the same network. So let's even now take this as an example. Yes, we are a global organization. There is a US organization, a US office, and there is a UK office. But we need these offices to be able to, talk to each other. Like, we need their resources to be able to connect together. So when we connect two networks together, that's what we call peering. So we connect two networks together to be able to talk to themselves, and that's what we refer to as, network peering. So this is one work tool that we'll go to. This is just talking about how do we connect to our Azure environment from our physical system. Let's say, at least you've heard people say they work from home, and you feel like, what if you want to access a file on your server in your office? How will you do this? So that's why, the virtual network comes in. Or it is not in your office, it sits in Azure, because the Wi-Fi I use at home is not connected to Azure, but I need to connect to our Azure environment, not by signing into the portal now. I need to connect to it. Maybe I want to use the storage account explorer. I want to explore, the files and folder that we have saved in our storage account in Azure. I need to connect to that Azure environment to be able to do this. So we use what we call the VPN. I'm sure all of us have an idea of what VPN does. The fact that you want to watch that Nigerian match, you need to maybe connect to a VPN in Nigeria, and that makes you, to the network provider, it will look as if you are actually present in Nigeria, which is not. So the VPN, which is called virtual private network, it makes you, connect to another network, and you will be on the network as if you are actually present there. So that VPN, that is what it does. So in Azure, we have different type of VPN. We have the point to site, the site to site, and the express route. So as you can see, the site to site, what this does is, our office, we want to connect it with our Azure environment. So once you step into the Azure environment, into your office, you don't need to you don't need to um, you don't need to connect um, to anything again. Once you step into the office, you are able to connect to all the virtual machine, or all the resources in your Azure environment. And this is what we call, site to site. Is building to Azure. But if I want to connect from my laptop, which is just my laptop, and the Azure environment, I need to use the point to site, because it's a point, it's one system to our Azure environment. And that's what we call the point to site. But these two that I talked about, just like a VPN that you use on your phone, on your system, you still need internet to be able to connect this VPN. What if we want to connect over a private network? We do not want to go through the internet. And that's where the express route comes in. So this is a connection made to Azure over a private connection. So in terms of security, these are used by big organizations. The DNS, I think we can take a 5-minute break here. practice. I might go at a more faster pace than I'm going now because it looks like we'll take all the time. Okay, let me just explain the DNS. We can take 5 minutes, then my pace might change when I start talking about the storage account and the likes. The DNS, a typical example is you want to connect to google.com. Google.com is English. Google is English. That's a language we understand. The computer doesn't understand Google. It doesn't understand babafemi.com. It doesn't. That all those ones are words. The computer doesn't understand. The computer only understands binary numbers, which is 0 and 1. So that's why for everything we do on the back end, we say 0 for off, 1 for on. That's the only thing the computer understands. So when we type in google.com, we as a person, we cannot, okay, I want to access google.com. I need to climb 192.168.0.1. It won't be easy for me also, you know. So that means any site I want to access, I need to be climbing their IP address. No, it doesn't work that way. What if I can just search for google.com, then I get in there? But the computer doesn't understand it. It only understands 0 and 1, which is binary. So we need something to convert this google.com into the binary numbers that the computer understands. Then we need these binary numbers to be converted back to the domain that we understand. So like I said, every system that you use has an IP address. Your phone, when it's connected to the internet, has an IP address. So when we host an application on a server, when you want to connect, google.com is hosted on a server, on a machine. If I want to connect to google.com, I will connect to that machine. You understand? And that's why I can access, is the IP address of the machine that we are connecting to. But we don't know the IP address of the machine. We only know google.com. So the DNS comes in this way. It converts the domain name, like google.com, to that IP address and converts that IP address back to the domain name. So basically that's what it do. For now, just take it like that, because it does have more function than that, but that's the main thing that it does. Now we have storage accounts, and under storage we'll be talking about the storage account and some of the benefits, the storage tiers, the redundancy options that makes this storage account available, just like your Google Drive. It's always available. Why is it always available? We want to talk about what are some of the ways of migrating. Let's say we have data on our on-premises environment to the cloud. How do we migrate all these? How do we do um, explore our files? That's the same way we explore them on the system. Now, storage accounts, some of the thing when it comes to storage accounts is the fact that for every storage account you create, there is always an endpoint. An endpoint in the sense that there is always a URL, where, or domain name where your storage account is attached to. So your storage account is always accessible over the internet via a URL. And that makes it, you need, when you're creating the storage account, you need to make sure that the name you have given to this storage account is globally unique, in the sense that when I name my storage account Babafemi, just the same way, two people cannot have a Gmail account. Once I have babafemi at gmail.com, no one else can have that babafemi at gmail.com. Because when you want to open your Google Drive, this identity will be used, as a URL to that your Google Drive. That's why when you want to share a file and folder within that Google Drive, you will be given a URL which is actually for you. And that's why two people cannot, make use of one Gmail account or one Yahoo account or something. So that's it. So storage account, what it provides is it gives access to be able to at least save your files and folders. So there are different
No, we talked about the high availability in the sense that we want to make sure that our files and folders are always available to us. How are they available? What are the plans? What are the strategies behind this? And that's what we call the storage redundancy. So when we have a replication strategy, how do we, set up this replication, and what are different replication strategies that we have when it comes to storage account? So we'll talk about the local redundancy, where you have your storage account within one particular data center. It might be on different servers, but it's still within one particular data center. So that means when you have a replication, you want to have your files and folder replicated to multiple servers within one particular data center. Then moving away from that, we have another one, which is the zone redundancy. So for the zone redundancy option, we have three availability zones. That means your storage account is actually within three availability zones. Let's say you deploy one, in different data center within um, Southwest, another one within the South, another one within the Southeast, something like that. You know, then we have the geo redundancies, where you have just one particular data center. You are just taking advantage of one particular data center, within the region, not different zones now. So I'm only making use of, you know, um, the data center in Lagos, and I want to have a secondary data center, in Accra in Ghana. So it's not as if I what I want to do is I just want to use two different data centers that are actually in two different regions. You know, then we have the geo zones redundancy, where we are taking advantage of different data centers within a region, within different zones, and we want to have our storage account still replicated to a single data center in another region. That's what the geo zone talks about. Then we have different storage services that we have, just like of the hard drive, and the hard drive. That's what we call the Azure disk here. So those are actually attached to your system, but we have different ones. What if I want to host, let's say I have a company like Netflix that puts in, um, videos, music, and the likes, or what's all those other ones. So let's take Netflix as an example. So for us to host, or for us to, save unstructured data like text message, like movies, audio files, and the likes. So we take advantage of what we call the Azure blob, the blob storage. So blob storage, also referred to as container storage, are used to host unstructured data. Then we have what we call the queue. The queue storage are actually storage used within two services, like let's say two applications that needs to talk to each other. We need to store some of the files that are used in communicating, that these applications use in communicating between themselves. So we take advantage of the queue. Then we have the file, Azure file, where we always have what we call the network file, where when we put the file, or folder in our network, everyone within that particular network can go there to pick up that file. So we use what we call the Azure file for this purpose. Then the last one is the table, which are used in storing, structured data like your database and the likes. So I told you that every storage account you create in Azure has an endpoint, has a URL. So once that's why it's globally unique. When I have Babafemi, it will there will be a URL, an endpoint that is appended to that particular, storage accounts, and that's what you can see here. Then we'll talk about the tiers. How do we access the storage account? Is it something we use every day? Is it something we just use as a backup? Maybe once in 180 days. And that's how the tiers comes in. So if it's something we use every day, we want to take advantage of the hot tier. So if you don't use this every day, we just use this for backup. Let's say we only need that backup once in 90 days. We can say, yes, we want to use the code, tier. So all these are, but if you are using a database and application that people access every day, then you use the auth. So these are just how that storage account is being accessed. So we'll talk about the Azure Migrate. So we have an on-premises environment, an IT room, and we said let's move to Azure so that we can take off all these operational costs that we are incurring. So to move to Azure, we need a service to migrate our files and folders, all these our files to the cloud, or maybe we have a backup, a backup server that will need to migrate to the cloud. So we can use this Azure Migrate to do that. Same thing as the data box, which migrates, our backup to the cloud. So when you want to move your backup to the cloud, when you want to move your file down, so we make use of the Azure Migrate and the Azure Data Box. Then this talks about, different
Sorry, please.
yeah.
Regarding the data box, I read it that is the if you need a data box from the Azure will send it. Is that they were taking it as if it's a device, a physical device. But I'm not sure. Is it a physical device or
No,
it's
no,
still
it's still in the cloud.
okay?
There is no physical device. So you are migrating
Okay.
your data from Azure from your location, you know. So it's nothing is being sent to you. You create every devices virtually, you know. There is no so as you can see here, let me see. So move your data recovery back up to Azure. So your Azure doesn't sit on your environment. Your environment, it doesn't sit in your server environment. What if you don't have a physical office? Where will your that device send to? So maybe you are talking about the data box itself, but the Azure data box is virtual. So we talked about the file management option. How do we access our file? On your system, you have what we call the file explorer, you know, where you can see all your files, your downloads, your desktop, your document and the like. Same way, you can have what we call the Azure Storage Explorer. You can install it on your machine, on your laptop, so that you can access all your files and folders that you save in Azure. Just the same way you access your files and folders that are stored on your physical system. Then we have the easy copy. The easy copy is when you want to use a command line, when you want to manage your files and folders automatically.
You are muted.
So when you want to manage, your files and folders, automatically, we'll still get there. Now we are still concerned about managing all your resources from the GUI, which is from the portal. Then we have what we call the file sync. Like I said, I explained in the class that, let's say you want to, you have an on-premises and you have this particular file or folder that you need to, sync to the cloud. You want to be able to access it in the cloud. Also, you want to be able to access it on your Azure environment. Let's say you lost your system and when we have that file sync, whenever you take up your system, and or a new system and you configure it with your username and password, when you log in, all that files and folders that belongs to you will automatically come back to that system because there is a sync going on at every instance. um, then let's move on to identity. Identity, like I said, your username and password is an identity in the cloud. And when you want to sign into, let's say you want to sign into a website, when you sign in, let's say Jumia now as an example, when you sign in, if you work with Jumia, you will have access to more information than me being a customer. So as a Jumia staff, You should have access to maybe the finances or the orders that are being made in a particular day. But for me as a customer, I will only have access to how much I spent on Jumia. What are the orders I've actually, what are some of the things I've ordered for on Jumia? I will not have access. So both of us still have access, but what we see is different based on the permission that has been assigned to me. So my identity comes with, access, and it comes with permission. So here we'll talk about authorization. That means you are authorized to access this website. But when we talk about, sorry, you're authorized to access this particular, part. But when we talk about authentication, that means, do you have permission to log in or to access, this website? So we'll talk about that. So let me just explain everything here so that we can scroll to what we have in there. So we have what we call the Entra ID, which manages your username and password in the cloud. Like I explained last time, I said, or in the morning, I said, let's say you join an organization, you are being given a system. For you to access that system, you need your username and password. If you get sacked and we do not want you to access that your username and password, we'll change, that password on the server, and you will not be able to. Then you can call the HR. The HR says, yeah, your offer has been terminated, and the likes, bring back our system. So what if we are in the cloud? What does this for us? And that's where the Enter ID comes in. So it manages, your credentials, your user account, same way the domain services does that. Then we'll talk about some of the authentication. So when you sign in or when you log in, we'll say you are authenticating. But for authorization, what can you access? So that's it. So um, in Azure, we have different authentication method like the single sign-on. Single sign-on in the sense that you have multiple applications that runs in your organization. Let's say when you are when you guys were creating your visa, on the UKVI, at some point, when you pay and you need to upload maybe your information, you'll be taken to another site entirely. So it doesn't tell you to now create a new password and a new username, because though they might be different application, but just one single credential that you own works for all these applications. And when you sign in into one application, you are not told or you are not instructed to sign into another application. So just one sign-in will work for multiple applications, and that's what we call single sign-on. Then multi-factor authentication is, yes, we want a second layer of authentication. When you want to log into our application, yes, we understand that you have your username and password, but is that really you? We have sent you a mail or a text message to your phone. Please, put in the code that we have sent to that your text message to confirm you actually owns that account, even when we understand that you have your username and password. And that's so we are pushing out a second layer of authentication. We believe, yes, you own the account, but we want you to go to, the second level. Then the passwordless is, we don't even want to create a password. We only want to get a token, like maybe some code or digits set to my text message, as a text message to my phone or to my email address. So instead of me creating a password, I'll just create maybe a username using my email address or my phone number. Then for every time I want to log in, a text message will be sent to my phone or to my email. That's what the passwordlet does. Then we talked about the guest access, where we have two organizations. I used PSG as an example. Yes, PSG, is owned by Arabs, and the stadium, that's Paris Saint-Germain Stadium, is owned by the city of Paris. you know. So, but PSG want to be playing their, home leagues there. So they need to come together and partner with another organization. So we are saying, let's partner together. We play there. you get revenue, then we can do this. So that's the same way it works in Azure. So we have two organizations working together. That's what we call business to business guest user. So you invite, or let's say I have an organization in Nigeria, and within this organization, I want, let's take bank as an example. Most of those guys you see on the counter, they might not even be the bank staff. They might be employed by another agent and outsourced to the bank. So there is another organization that does the outsourcing. The banks only, recruit the high management guys. So for the fact that these guys need to outsource for us, we need to invite them to the organization. They work as if they actually they are actually recruited by us, even when they are not recruited by us, but they work for us. So they are guests to the bank because the bank did not recruit them, directly, and that's the same way it works. So we can have guests collaborate with you, to work maybe on an application or something in the Azure, and that's why. So you can invite them to your tenant as a guest. Then we'll discuss the conditional access. At least most of us have, if you try to open Revolut from Nigeria, it will tell you this particular application is not for this region because they've created what we call a conditional access. If this condition is not met, please do not allow. That means if you're not within the UK, you are not within the US, please do not allow this person. And that's the same way it works. So if you want to restrict users, you can use what we call the conditional access. Then we'll talk about the outback, where these are permissions. This is the service that you use in assigning permissions to users. So I talked about the fact that you have a username and password that you use to access a particular application. However, what can you access at the back end is based on the permission that has been assigned to that your account. A Jumia staff and a Jumia customer will see two different things because they have two different assets. So what do we use in assigning these assets to users? And that's where the outback comes in. Then we move ahead to what we call the zero trust. Yes, we understand that you are the MD of this organization. Then you are the cleaner. But whenever you are signing into our application to our resource, we don't care. Everybody needs to go through the same process. And that's just the typical, definition of what we call the zero trust. Then we'll talk about the defense in depth. Let's take a physical building as an example. Now, I stay in a flat within a building. If you come to my place, before you get to my flat, you need to come to the main door. So you need access to that main door. Then when you walk past through the reception, you need another access to get into the building itself. Then when you get to the building, you need another access to get to, maybe my floor. Then when you get to my floor, you need another access to come into the flat. Then when you come into the flat, you need another access to maybe access the bedroom or the living room, something like that. So for every layer, before you access the data, you need to go through some security challenges, and that's what we call the defense in depth. So we always want to put a security at every layer of the Azure environment. Then we'll talk about the Microsoft vendor, which gives you recommendation based on the maybe security recommendation based on what is going on in your environment. So I just explained all those things. So authentication, authorization, multi-factor authentication, the Azure B2B, where you collaborate with other organizations. The B2C, this is the solution behind signing with Google, signing with Facebook. You want to use an identity that you already own. So because I created an application in my organization, there is no need for you to create a username and password again. No, because you have created it on Facebook. You can use that Facebook username and password to sign into my application. Fine. And that's what the B2C does. So conditional access, we just talked about it. The role base, we talked about it. Zero trust, defense in depth, Microsoft recommendation. Okay. So that's that. Should we continue or should I give another 5 minutes?
You can continue.
Yeah, this doesn't even. I'm not sure the learning part 3 doesn't won't take more time because this is just management. Okay, let's just quickly run this up. Then we can take a 5 minutes or then we'll come back to the exercise. So learning part 3, um, this is just talking about the cost management, the governance that we talked about. Some of the tools that we use in deploying our resources, and the monitoring tools. So cost management. So like I said, in the cloud, we use what we call the operational costing, which is OPEX. That means it is what you use, you pay for, pay per consumption, pay as you go. But for every resource that you create in the cloud or in the Azure environment, the cost is affected by different factors. Different factors in the sense that what region are you deploying this resource? So the cost in the UK region might be different from the cost of a virtual machine, the same size, the same virtual machine in another region. So the region as a big example. So, but let's take a look at each of these factors that are there. So the resource type you are deploying, if you are deploying a virtual machine, the cost is actually different from a storage account. So all resources in Azure doesn't have the same cost. So the type of resource you are deploying, you know, have an effect on how much you'll be paying. Then the consumption. So we have the pay as you go consumption, which is um, how these costs are actually being consumed. Then we have the maintenance. Let's say we created a virtual machine in the cloud. Now, when you're creating that virtual machine, because Azure has this predictability, I can tell you how much you will spend at the end of the month if you continue using this virtual machine 24/7. But what if during the weekend you do not need the virtual machine? You can turn it off, you know, and if you turn it off, that means at that particular time when that machine is turned off, you are not being charged, for the compute. You are not being charged for the compute. That means, it will save you some cost. Aside as against, making this virtual machine run 24 hours, in a day. So it has effect on it also. So the region, like I've said, what region do you want to deploy this resource? If you are deploying this resource in UK East, you know, it might cost you less when you deploy it in South Africa region. So the region also have an effect on how much you pay. The network traffic. So we talked about the Azure Migrate. We talked about, the data box. So we give you access. Let's say it's even free for you to push all your files and folders from your own premises to the cloud. Fine. But when you want to access it, we'll charge you, for each, data that you try to pull out of Azure. So that's also have effect. The network traffic have effect. So, and the last one, the type of subscription that you you know, have effect. So if you have a Microsoft Learn subscription, you will not be charged anything as against when you have a pay as you go subscription. So Azure Marketplace, just like our market, we go there to buy stuff. So that's the same way. All resources that we have in Azure are actually staged within the Azure Marketplace. So it is not the resources there are not the only ones provided by Azure. Third-party organizations like let's say AWS have a resource that they want to sell, they can put it on the Azure Marketplace also. So it is not limited to. So if you build an application now and you feel, yes, this will work for people, maybe to do this, then they can put it on Azure Marketplace. So pricing calculator, this explain, it gives you that um, uh, predictability or an estimate of how much you will spend if you spin up a particular resource. So you can check how much at the end of the day, it will cost you to run a particular resource, you know, and which is different from the total cost of ownership calculator. This works for when you want to migrate from on-premises to the cloud and you want to compare how much you will be spending if you leave your resources on your on-premise environment against when you move them to the cloud. So you use the total cost of ownership calculator to, check the balance or check the comparison. So Azure cost management, this just gives you, the recommendation. It gives you, it checks, how much using at that particular time. So it gives you that recommendation to say, hey man, if you continue this way, this is how much you spend. You can see your spending. You can track, your spending. You can see, you can budget it. You can even create an alert to say, when this cost exists, this particular cost, please do tell me, or shut down this subscription, things like that. So you can do all that from here. Then tags, just the same way you logically arrange your resources, but now you want to put the resource in different resource group, but you want to have a tag to say this A1 network, A1 company, they owns all these resources. Babafemi owns all these resources, so I will tag his name, or all the resources that I've deployed. We want to know who is deploying that resource, so we want to say created by is a tag, then you put your name. So created by Babafemi. So tomorrow, when there is issue with that resource, we can come and tell you, Babafemi, you created this resource. What did you do? How did you do it? Stuff like that. So you can have a tag, to logically organize. You can even tag it based on department, based on, the owner, based on what environment, if it's dev, if it's production, if it's test, depending on how you want. It's just for you to be able to at least say, okay, in production, all the production resources, this is the total cost, we are paying, based on this is the total cost we've actually consumed, just for testing and the likes. Then we have the governance, which, like I said, these are just rules that you make in Azure, just the same way we make it on, maybe on the upper chamber, likes, where you want to create what we call the Azure policy, to say nobody should be able to deploy a resource in South Africa region. Is a policy. Nobody should be able to deploy a virtual machine. Is a policy. A resource lock, I want to say, yes, when people join an organization, we want to make sure that this machine that hosts our application cannot be deleted or modified, so we can create what we call the resource lock. And, this prevents users from modifying or deleting that particular resource. So service to us, gives us like the security overview, of what's going on in our portal, same way as the purview. So this service to us gives us, the compliances, the audits, and everything related to security. The purview gives you, that unified data. Like, let's say you have multiple cloud environment like AWS, like Google GCP, and you want to view those data in just one place, so you can use this Microsoft Purview to bring all those, data into one place, just the insight, what's happening in each of those environments, and you want to view it in just one place. Then let's talk about different deployment tools that we have. But for now, like I said, you should be more concerned about just one, which is the Azure portal, which is the GUI. Then we have the cloud shell. If you want to, automatically manage your resources, you can use the CLI, the PowerShell. So we'll talk about these. I think in the cloud administrator class, we have different labs and exercises for each of each of these tools. Then the Azure Arc is, let's say, okay, we still have we host our Jam environment, our Java application in a virtual machine in the cloud. However, when there is an increase in traffic, we don't want another virtual machine to be created in the cloud. No. But we have a server on our on-premises environment. we want this to be extended to it. We are hosting that same application on our on-premises environment. So when there's a need for us to have another machine created, please make use of the server on the on-premises, and that's where the Azure Arc, it extends that services to all your on-premises environment. Then we'll talk about the ARM templates and the ARM itself. For every resources you create, there is actually something that manages them. And what manages your resources that are created, that are deleted, all the resources, depending on the operation you are performing on that resource, is being managed by what we call the Azure Resource Manager. And for every resource you create, a template will be created for you to say, this is how your resource will look like at the end of the day. This is all the, dependencies. These are all the resources that will be created alongside this particular resource. So that's where the template comes in. And so I'm just going to skip, like I said, let's go back. Yeah. So we are always deploying our resources from the cloud. We'll go in there. You look for when you were completing the the exercise for create a virtual machine or create a resource, you go in there to click on maybe create, then look for virtual machine you create. What if I want to do this using code? I don't want to go into the into the portal. I want to run some code to create all this. So we can take advantage of what we call the infrastructure as a code. It gives you that consistency. It makes sure that, so because if you go into the portal every time, what you created yesterday, you must even have forgotten how you created it down. What's the size of what you have created? But we want to treat that as a code, so that we go in there, we can see what we've deployed using that particular code. So that's where the infrastructure as a code comes in. Do not worry yourself. We'll talk more about this under the next. Then the ARM template, like I said, for every for every resource you create, there is a template created for you to show you what will be created, how it will be created. So you can use this template to serve as your infrastructure as a code. You can deploy it, but don't worry. This is an example of you, creating your infrastructure automatically. So here, what this does is it wants to create a storage account. You can see the resource is a storage account. What's the name that will be given to the storage account? Storage account name. How do we get the storage account name? So we have declared a parameter here to say storage account name. These are things you need to look together, to create the storage account name. The resource ID, the unique string, you can put in a string and then combine it with the resource ID, a resource group, Then what location? We are saying, okay, we've declared another location. Whatever location you've deployed your resource group should be the same location where the resources should be created. Then the storage account, what type of redundancy options that we want to put in place? Locally redundancy, so we create an SKU. Then we have, what kind of storage do you want to create? We only talk about the type of storage. We didn't talk about so we only talk about the storage tiers here. We didn't talk about the kind of storage. I think the kind of storage we'll still talk about it. I think is the next one when we'll go deeply into storage account or each of the services. Then we have the properties. How do we access the storage account? Is it something we access every day? Do you want to set it to auth, archive, code, or cool? That's what's going on there. So this is readable, you know, and so you don't need to worry yourself. It's not as if we type all these things from head. We have documentation, we copy it, and we just make um changes. Even all the code for application that we do, most of it we copy it out from, and we just make changes to suit ourselves. So it's not as if um we generate all this thing from there. So it's easy to learn, but for now, do not worry yourself about this. Then let's talk about the monitoring tools. For monitoring tools, for everything that we do in Azure, we want to be able to monitor them. What if, we just release the result as a jump official. We don't know when people will start accessing the resource. We don't know when, our machine will start slowing down. So we want to create an alert to say when the machine gets to this CPU, you can just send us, a notification to say, oh, the health of this machine, is not good. It has started slowing down, advise us on some of, how to improve the performance of our machine, of our resources. So that's where, this monitoring tools comes in. So we have what we call the Azure Advisor that advise you on how to increase the performance of your resource, how to reduce the cost, of that resource, the security. Then we have the service health, which checks, what's the status of each of the resource that you have in Azure. What's the status, based on the global? Is Azure saying there is a downtime in any of the region? Just like during what happened during the election when the INEC said, they had their, IREC go down because AWS was down. So we can check if truly AWS was down, using the AWS status. Here is the Azure status. You can check if a particular region is down using the service health, and you can check if it's just your own resource using the resource health that is actually tailored for you. Then the monitor also. So it monitors. So we have different services that runs. When you deploy your application to your virtual machine, because Azure, Azure Advisor or the Azure Health monitors the health of your virtual machine. It doesn't monitor the application itself. So, but we want to monitor the application, then we'll take advantage of the Azure Monitor, where we can where we can use the application insight, to monitor how our application is behaving. You can use what we call the smart alert to say, before my application gets down or go down, when my CPU usage reach 70%, please alert me. You can do all those things. So you are trying to prevent a downtime by setting up a smart alert. You can even automate an action to say, when it's 70%, please create another virtual machine. Then you can have a customized dashboard to say, oh, whatever is going on in my application. That's why when you're walking into the IT room or data center, you will see them. They will have like a TV, a screen, the monitor, the downtime, uptime of applications. You'll just be seeing those things, green, red, yellow, and the likes. So that's what they monitor to on the dashboard. All right. Now, that's the end of our class.
Yes, yes.
Let me just go ahead so that we just complete it at once. Since the major thing is for me to at least let you know how to access, because I had a call with one or two of you guys, and I noticed that some of the people are still not able to access those um, labs. So each of the labs, I'll send it to the group. If you need it, and if you don't have access to some of the labs, you can text me or just DM me. I would search for those labs. So let me go here. I think I have one of the lab here. Yeah. So we have the explore your sandbox, create Azure resource. Let me take a look at these two. So let's say you want to explore your sandbox. Okay, let's do it from here. Let's do it from here. So the same thing that you have here is what you have here. This is just showing you how to activate your sandbox. So it tells you that when you activate your sandbox, you will see this on the other side. It will tell you it's connecting, so do not worry about this CLI for now, or the PowerShell for now. It just shows you that you've activated your sandbox, and for each sandbox you have access to 10 instances of sandbox every day. So for you to be able to perform this, um this exercise now, let me activate the sandbox. So I need to sign in. That's the first thing you need to do. Sign in. Don't want to. Okay, just sorry. Let me use this profile will not give me that. Let me use the other profile. So sorry. Yep, because I do not want to sign out of. So I've because this guy is signing to my, to my personal account. So that's the first thing. When you click on activate sandbox, it runs to, then it will tell you to sign in, which I've signed in now. Then the next thing for you, before you even start doing your lab, then you click on activate. Just wait for it to finish activating. Review the permission. So review the permission. Just give this time. Once, so you need to accept. So that means you need to sign in first, activate, then review. So just wait for the sandbox to complete what it's doing. You will notice there will be a change in what I have on the CLI here. It will show you that my account has been logged in. Just hold on. See, it's creating the resource group for me automatically. It's assigning the roles because this is a test environment, so it does all those things automatically. Just hold on. It's creating the storage account that I will use attached to this virtual machine, and then like just hold on. It's creating everything. Just give it. Yeah. So you can see the sandbox has been activated. I have 59 minutes remaining. I have used 1 out of 10 sandboxes for today. So tomorrow it will be reset back to 10. So it's signing in. I'm just going to wait for this to sign in. Now you can see the Cloud Shell, that means I'm signed in. So since what I want to do doesn't pertain to the Cloud Shell, it tells me to sign into my Azure portal. So for now, I can now click on, sign into the portal from here, and I sign in with the same account, that I'm using. And this will create, you'll get something like this, Microsoft Learn Sandbox, which will be the name of the organization. If you guys have multiple organizations and you are not seeing this Microsoft Sandbox, you can click on switch directory, and you can see that my account belongs to different organization. However, the one you are more concerned, in case you have set up a default, a default directory. So if you are not seeing that, but most of you will see it because you have not created any different directory. But I'm just telling you in case that happens. So you see Microsoft Learn Sandbox. If you click on subscription here, you should see this concierge subscription, and there I can now perform what they asked me to perform. Here they asked me to create a virtual machine. So how do I create a virtual machine? So select create a virtual machine, create a resource, which is this. If I click on create a resource, then go to compute. I look for compute here, then go to virtual machine. I can look for virtual machine here, which I'm not seeing because there are a lot of compute instances. So you can click on, see in all services. Then from here, you would see the virtual machine. Then you can go ahead to create. But the best way to do this, instead of clicking on create a resource, or just look for the resource you want to create, like the virtual machine. I'll just look for it here. I search for it, and it brings out the virtual machine itself. Then I click on create. I click on create. So as you can see, when I wanted to create a virtual machine, it gives me option. If I want to create a virtual machine with, maybe there's been a configuration I've created in the past, or I want to create a VMSS. So you can, but for now, I want to create a virtual machine. Then here it says on the create a virtual machine, open this basic tab, yes, which is the basic tab. You can see verify or enter the following values. So here they need me to be sure that I'm creating this on the concierge subscription, which is fine. Select the resource group name that begins with learn. So I'll just select resource group name. See, you can see that I can create a new resource, but for the purpose of this training, if you create a new resource, it might not work. So you need to select the one that has been created for you. Then the virtual machine name should be my VM. I'll just copy this. I'll copy this and paste it here. Then region, leave as default. Availability option, leave at default. Security type, leave default. Image, leave default. Then VM architecture, yes, leave it default, x64. Then size, leave it at default. So we talked about the fact that Azure gives you, that estimate of how much you will be spending at the end of the month. You can see if I spin off this virtual machine at the end of the month, I'll pay $85 per, you can go in and search for other ones. If I click on see all sizes, if you select any of these size, you can see if I'm selecting this one, 51, 85, 36, 9, 72, 4, 102. So you can see that estimate, of how much you will pay at the end of the day if you are making use of any of these virtual machine or any resource in Azure. So I'm just going to leave this as default. Then size, yes, password. They need me to change it to the authentication type to change to password. Then I can create a username here to say maybe Babafemi. Then password. Oh, sorry. I'm so sorry. Username should be Azure user. So just follow these. Then you can put in a password. Then really no, what's going on? Yeah. Then we enter public inbound, select none, then review. So click on review and create, select review and create. So it didn't ask me to set, to go to disks to select the type of disks that I want. If you want to change your disks, you can see 30 gig. If you need something higher, 512, 1 terabyte, just the same way you have it. If you want to create an SSD, if you want to do an HHD, so yeah, you can select it. So Oyofe, this brings me back to the fact that when you are creating your virtual machine, there are other resources that will be created, and this is it. So you can see on the disk option, this is for the disk, this is for the networking, and this is where your VNet gets created. So you can create a name for your VNet, if you want to create, if you don't want to use the default that will be created for you. So you can see that you have some of the things you can actually do, even when you want to create an order, maybe application gateway, but don't leave all these ones. But this shows you that there are other resources that this virtual machine is dependent on. So you can see them here. If you want to make sure your system shuts down, maybe at 10 a.m. or 7 p.m. You can do that here. What time zone, you know, monitoring, how do you monitor, so all those things, do you want to target like what environment? I can say the display name or environment is, or let's say created by, then I'd say Babafemi. So all these things, but for now, they ask us to leave it as default. So all these things are just so now you can see Microsoft has passed this validation and said, man, if you do this, this is how much you'll be spending per hour if your system is up and running, So I go ahead to select create, then I'll wait for this to create. So you can see, I told you can see initializing templates. If I go back to here, it will take you to the, we talked about the fact that Azure uses what we call the ARM template, to deploy your resources. So the Azure Resource Manager is the one deploying your resources now. And that's why you can see deployment in progress. So if I go to the template, this is what it looks like. This is what Azure is trying to use to deploy that particular resource. So you can see automate deploying resources with Azure Resource Template. So if I want to use a template, I can download the template from here. So these are all the resources that will be created for me. This is network, this is network security group. You can see public IP, the virtual machine itself, I'm doing the auto shutdown. So, but forget about all this one for now. You can see the other resources, all the resources that will be created alongside, this virtual machine, and the virtual machine has been created. So if I go back to the virtual machine now, I should be seeing my virtual machine running. Then here you will see that I've I have a public IP address assigned to my machine now. If I want to access this machine, I need to go to this public IP address and put in the username and password, I've created while creating this machine, and that's the same way I was accessing. Now you can see the tag. You can see the tag. Please hold on. Let me just finish up, please. You can see the tag, created by Baba Femi. Go ahead, please. Go ahead. Go ahead with your question,
All
please.
right. Sorry. How do we start this virtual machine after creating all this
It
to
started
make it
automatically. This is it. Start, restart,
okay to start
stop.
automatically?
But you can see there's a
Okay.
start button there, restart button, the stop button.
All right. All right. All
You
right.
get, so you
All
can
right.
do
Okay.
that.
Okay. Thank you.
So you can see created by, this is the tag. So every time I go in here, I can see the tag, you know. So we talked about the role-based access management. What access do I have on this machine? I can check. So you can see, view my access. It will tell me, what access I have. I have a contributor role. That means I have access on this machine, what are the tags that have been set on this machine? I can create more tags, display name of this machine, and I put it, stuff like that. I can create more tags, that's one tag to be added, which is the display name. I can apply this tag even after I've created the machine, and I can see. So the number of tags that you've created, you can go ahead to add a department to say what department does this machine belongs to, and I can say sales department, you know, sales department, I apply it again. So every time, if I go back to the overview here, um, then I go to, sorry, if I go back to the tags there, you can see, I can view these and say, oh, this virtual machine is used by, the sales department, this display name is this. So you can see some of the thing, you can check the size of this virtual machine. But for now, we are not looking at all these things because you can even check the size. If you set up the policies in Azure, like I said, you want to prevent this machine from doing some things, this is how you. So what this does is they are saying, for every machine that you create, please enable Azure Monitor to monitor this machine, and you can see what's the compliance state. We talked about the policies. What's the compliance state? And this is telling me, 100% because this has been enabled. Then we talked about, the resource log. Let's say, you come into organization and you want to make sure, you lock this particular resource. You don't want people to create, so do anything. So I can create a log. See, I do not have the permission to do this. That means, depending, this is the access that have been assigned to my account. I cannot create a log. But on when you follow, I think maybe the next one, or um, the next exercise or something, you should be able to, create a log on that machine. So this is just telling you, this is just telling you, for every exercise that you have in here, you need to activate your sandbox. Then from there, you can go ahead to create whatever resource or exercise that you have been told to complete. If you don't mind, um, would that do, or you guys want me to go to another, maybe one more exercise?
Yeah, please. Um, this virtual machine that we just created now.
Yeah.
So if I want to access it on my own computer now,
Yes.
so I will have to press the connect on the other side and copy the public
IP address. Yes.
address and
Yes.
place it on the RDP.
Yes.
Okay.
So you put it on the RDP. Let's say RDP. So if I create a new RDP and I say This machine is, let's even clean up this one now. Let's say it's a new machine. It's not something I've connected to in the past. Let me hide this. And I say 20, 20.53.97.09. So when I click on connect, it will check if the machine is available, is up and running. You understand? This guy says, Benny, I don't recognize this machine. You understand? But because I have my other machine that I've created before, it will just look for it, and say, yes, I've seen this machine. Because it's the first time you are signing in, you might not be presented with this thing. You might need to put in your username, then you need to put in the password that you've created while creating the virtual machine.
You
Then
mean we
you're
should put our identity?
yes, then you are able to log into this machine itself.
Thank you.
So let's take a look at another one. I think the storage account so create a storage blob. Let me activate this because it's different. It's a different exercise. So that particular exercise I've just completed, is just meant for that virtual machine. So if you decide to use that particular sandbox for this storage account, you might not be able to create a storage account. You understand? And that's why I'm reactivating, another sandbox for this. So this should still tell me that I've used. So now you can see it's creating, a storage account for me.
I'm sorry. I'm trying to. I went to the RDP to create a virtual machine. I tried to write an IP address there. It's saying I can't. I can't. There's nothing like that. How do I know the IP address I will write to create a new virtual machine?
You're not writing any IP address. It's going to create an IP address for you automatically.
Okay, I mean on my own system. If I want to create a new virtual machine on my system.
On your system or in Azure?
Ah, maybe it's in Azure then.
Where are you creating your virtual
I thought I
machine?
can.
If you want to do a virtual machine on your system, you need to go and you need to create an Hyper-V, So it's a different thing entirely. It's a different thing entirely,
Okay. Thank you.
So,
Thank
but
you.
what we are doing is, okay, this is. I think I need to go and activate the feature. Yes. So on the feature here, you need to go and create. So it's a big one. Okay, where is this? So Hyper-V. That's how we create. You see. So what this does is it allows me to create a virtual machine on my physical machine or something. But here we are only creating on on our Azure environment. Go ahead, Olayinka.
Yeah, before now, my understanding on the RDP is gaining access into someone else's computer, or maybe you bringing someone else's computer into your computer. But now it's looking like, are we
It's the same
creating?
thing. It's the same thing.
Okay, it's the same thing.
Yeah. So we are not
Okay,
creating anything on our system. We are creating the machine in Azure. Then we are logging in from our own physical system.
yeah. So is it just a virtual system, then making your system a dual one, or
So
someone
it's not.
else's computer
It's
bringing it
someone
into your own
else's
computer?
computer, but the one in Azure belongs to you also. You understand?
Oh, okay.
The same way your physical system that you are using to join this class, if you give me the IP address, I can log in from here. It's
Okay.
just you trying to log into another remote computer that doesn't, that is not here. You understand? So it's the same thing.
Okay, makes sense. Makes sense.
Okay. So
Okay.
here you can see I've activated another one, and basically this is for me to create a storage account. So this I've been told I've used two of my sandboxes. So now you can see this has been created for me. Now let me go ahead to create this guy, which is the storage account. So I'm using the same email that I used in signing into the sandbox. And as you can see, the Microsoft Learn, the same way I check that, the concierge. If I go back to, the virtual machine now, you will not see it again because I've switched to um, another sandbox already. Now, to create this guy, let me just to add this. Okay, now you can see same way you need to create a resource. Click on resource, um, then go to storage, you know, then click on storage account. You can search for it also here by saying storage account, and you can see the storage account. You can do that from here. You can do that from here also if you have access to it. So you don't need to always click on the resource, and so you can do that from here. Now you can see um basic storage accounts also has networking. You need, how do you want to access the storage account? Is it from the public? Do you want to access just it, you want to access it via the private, maybe internal only? So this is the same thing that we have here. The concierge starts with resource that has learn, and here is saying create a resource, a storage account with a unique name, like I said. So I'm just to do Baba Femi. Let's see if that is available. Yeah, that's available. Wow. So leave as default. Then we have standard. Yes, leave as default. Locally redundancy, the redundancy option, I want to check it as locally redundancy. Then in the advanced tab, you know, I've been told to, um, check enabling anonymous access into the container, which is checked. Then select review. So you can do your tag also, whatever you need to do. Tags are very necessary. Then it's reviewing now. Then I click on create. So just hold on. Still deploying the same way we deploy. Um, you can see the template. What are some of the resources that will be created? Here there is the storage account itself. Um, yeah. So public access. This storage account doesn't have IP, so you will not see something like public IP. But it just gives you, that public access option. So let's wait for this to create. Still deploying. You can see it's deploying. So you can check the place of your deployment. You know, um, Now provision type is succeeded. There are a lot of things to check, but don't worry now. Now my storage account has been created. Then it's asking me to, let's work with the type. We talked about different storage that you can create. You have the container, which is the blob itself, the file, the queue, the table. But now we want to work with the blob. So you can see the resources also have, this also have the access control where I can check my access that I have on this particular, resource. Then data migration that we talked about. If you want to do storage explorer, where you can access this from your on-premises environment, you can see, just like this is how you will see this recently viewed, blob storage, just the same way you have recently viewed documents, downloads and the likes. Then here, endpoints, alert. So okay, don't worry about this for now. So let's go back to the container, and I'm going to create a new container. That's what I've been asked. Enter a name of the container, and I'm going to name this Babafemi 2. This is the container name, and inside there, this has been created for me. It's still private. That means I only have access to it. Someone from the outside the organization will not have access to. So if I try to access this outside there, I will not have access. Anonymous access. So then step 4, we need the image. Okay, so Then select the container and you can upload to the container just the same way we upload to our Google environment. I'm just going to upload. Yeah. So files, then I upload. Then this has been uploaded, just like the same way you can see 1.3 gig or something. Now I need to copy this URL. They want to see if I can access this file. Then this is the URL to the file. This is it. Then you can see how do we access what's the access type, what's the type, blob, you can see all those things. The image that I've uploaded is a JPEG, so I can put that here. That's it. So babafemi.blob.core, you can see what I've created, which is the name of the blob, then the file I've uploaded. So if I click here, this is giving me this error, and this is the error you should get. Then they ask me to go back and change the access level to anonymous read only access so that I can read it. So if I go back here and I go back to my container, I change access level to blob, just the blob that I've created now. Then if I go back here and refresh, you would see, and I have access to view what I've uploaded.